When Dylan Carter received two letters on the same snowy Montana morning in 1883, he never imagined they would shatter everything he believed about love loss and the brother he buried in his heart. One letter was from his mail-order bride Emma, describing herself as small and delicate. The other was from someone claiming to be his dead brother Sam, saying, "I'm coming home." Dylan thought grief was playing tricks on his mind. But when Emma stepped off that train, beautiful, full-figured, and nothing like her description, she carried secrets that would prove his dead brother might not be so dead after all. What happens when the woman you ordered isn't the woman you expected, but exactly the woman you needed? And what happens when the brother you mourned for 5 years walks back into your life claiming he sent her to you? This is a story about second chances, hidden truths, and discovering that sometimes the greatest love comes in the most unexpected packages. If you're ready for a tale that will touch your heart and keep you guessing until the very end, hit that like button, subscribe for more amazing stories, and let's dive into Dylan and Emma's extraordinary journey together. I'm not the bride you ordered. Veteran gets wrong, mail order bride. Then his dead brother returns. The Montana wind carried more than snow that December morning in 1883. It carried secrets, lies, and the echo of a past Dylan Carter thought he had buried with his brother's empty coffin. Dylan stood at his kitchen table staring at two letters that had arrived on the same mail delivery. His weathered hands, scarred from years of ranch work and war, trembled slightly as he held them. The first was from Emma Rodriguez, his mail-order bride due to arrive on today's train. The second bore handwriting that made his blood run cold. Sam's handwriting. His brother had been dead for 5 years, killed at Gettysburg, or so Dylan had always believed. Yet here was a letter dated just 1 week ago in Sam's unmistakable script. "Little brother, I'm coming home. There's so much to explain. The woman I sent to you will help you understand. Trust her, Dylan. Trust me one more time." Dylan's hands shook as he set the letter down. The PTSD episodes had been getting worse lately. The nightmares, the voices, the feeling that Sam was still somehow present in this empty house. Now this. Was his mind finally snapping completely? The sound of wagon wheels crunching through snow brought him back to the present. Through the frosted window, he could see old Pete Hawkins' wagon approaching, carrying a single passenger bundled in a dark wool coat. Emma. Dylan grabbed his coat and stepped onto the porch, his breath forming white clouds in the bitter air. He had memorized her letter by heart. "I am small in stature, delicate of build, with fair complexion and light brown hair. I am skilled in domestic duties and possess a gentle temperament." The wagon stopped and Pete jumped down to help the passenger. When the figure turned toward the house, Dylan's expectations shattered like ice. Emma Rodriguez was not small or delicate. She was gloriously, beautifully full-figured, with rich dark hair that caught the winter sunlight and warm brown skin that spoke of her Mexican heritage. Her eyes were the color of coffee, and when they met his across the snowy yard, he saw intelligence, wariness, and something that looked like relief. She was nothing like her description. She was better. But Dylan, conditioned by years of war and disappointment, felt only confusion and a stab of what he was ashamed to recognize as disappointment. This wasn't what he had ordered. This wasn't what he had prepared himself for. Emma seemed to read the conflict on his face. Her shoulders squared defensively and her chin lifted with quiet dignity. "Mr. Carter, I'm Emma Rodriguez." Her voice carried a slight accent, musical and warm, despite the cold air between them. She stood beside the wagon, her hands clutched around a worn leather medical bag, waiting for his response. Dylan found his manners, though his mind still reeled. "Miss Rodriguez, welcome to Montana." He gestured toward the house. "Please come inside. It's too cold to stand out here talking." Pete Hawkins unloaded Emma's single trunk and tipped his hat. "Storm's coming in hard, Dylan. Won't be able to make the return trip to town until it passes. Few days, maybe more." Dylan nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. As Pete's wagon disappeared into the swirling snow, Dylan realized he was now alone with a woman who had somehow misrepresented herself in her letters, while his supposedly dead brother claimed to be on his way home. The wind picked up, howling around the small ranch house like a living thing. Emma shivered, and Dylan's natural courtesy overrode his confusion. "Let's get you inside," he said, reaching for her trunk. "We can sort everything else out by the fire." The interior of Dylan's house reflected 5 years of bachelor living. Clean but sparse, functional but lacking any warmth. Emma looked around with observant eyes, taking in the simple furniture, the cold fireplace, and the complete absence of any personal touches except for a faded photograph on the mantel. "That's my brother Sam," Dylan said, noticing her gaze. "He died in the war." Emma studied the photograph of two young men in Union uniforms. The resemblance between them was strong, though Sam appeared more outgoing, his arms slung around Dylan's shoulders in easy camaraderie. "You were close. We were everything to each other after our parents died." Dylan's voice was flat and motionless. "He was my best friend." Emma set her medical bag on the table and turned to face him. "Mr. Carter, I think we need to have an honest conversation. I suspect, or you're disappointed in my appearance." Dylan's face flushed. "Ma'am, please don't lie to me." Her voice was gentle but firm. "My letters described someone else entirely, didn't they? Someone smaller, perhaps more conventionally attractive." Dylan stared at her, caught between honesty and politeness. "The letters did describe someone different." Emma nodded, unsurprised. "I thought as much. The woman who wrote those letters for me was my friend Maria. She meant well, but she described herself instead of me. By the time I realized what she had done, it was too late to correct the misunderstanding." "Why didn't you write the letters yourself?" Emma's cheeks colored slightly. "I can read well enough, but writing in English, it's not my strongest skill. My father taught me medicine, not correspondence." "Your father was a doctor." "Yes, in Sonora. He treated everyone who came to him, regardless of their ability to pay. That's how I learned to read people's needs, to see beyond what they show on the surface." Dylan heard something in her voice when she mentioned her father. Past tense. Loss. He died last year. Fever." Emma's voice caught slightly. "That's when I decided to come north to start over." The wind rattled the windows, and Dylan realized they were indeed trapped together until the storm passed. He should offer her food, warmth, basic hospitality. But the confusion of the morning, the letters, her unexpected appearance, the growing intensity of the storm left him feeling off balance. "You must be hungry," he said finally. "I can make some coffee, maybe rustle up some food." Emma smiled for the first time since arriving, and Dylan felt something shift in his chest. Her smile transformed her entire face, making her eyes sparkle with warmth and humor. "Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to cook for you. It would help me feel useful, and I suspect you've been living on bachelor fare for too long." Dylan gestured toward his modest kitchen. "Help yourself to whatever you can find." As Emma moved around the kitchen, Dylan found himself watching her with growing fascination. She moved with quiet efficiency, examining his meager supplies and somehow creating order from chaos. She hummed softly as she worked a Mexican tune that filled the cold house with unexpected warmth. "Mr. Carter," she said as she prepared a simple meal, "may I ask you something?" Dylan, and yes. "Did you really want a mail-order bride, or did you want someone to take care of you?" The question was so direct, so cutting to the heart of things that Dylan was momentarily speechless. I, I wanted companionship, someone to share this place with, but not necessarily love." Dylan considered this. "I wasn't sure I was capable of love anymore. After the war, after losing Sam, I thought maybe companionship would be enough." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "My father used to say that people often settle for less than they deserve because they're afraid to hope for more." "And what did you hope for when you answered my advertisement?" Emma's hands stilled over the cooking pot. "Safety, a chance to use my skills to help someone, maybe eventually respect and affection." "You were running from something." It wasn't a question, and Emma didn't treat it like one. "Yes, an arranged marriage to a man who saw me as property. My father's death left me vulnerable to his advances. Coming here was my escape." Dylan felt a familiar anger rise in his chest, the same rage he'd felt watching innocents suffer during the war. "Did he hurt you?" "He tried." Emma's voice was steady, but Dylan heard the steel underneath. "I may not look like much of a fighter, Mr. Carter, but I have my father's stubborn streak and his knowledge of anatomy. I know exactly where to hit a man to make him think twice about pursuing unwilling women." Despite everything, Dylan found himself smiling. "I'll keep that in mind." As they sat down to eat together, the storm outside intensified. Snow pelted the windows, and the wind howled with increasing fury. They were well and truly snowed in. This could last for days, Dylan said, glancing toward the windows. I hope you don't mind close quarters. I've lived through worse. Emma's voice was matter of fact. Though I should probably mention I talk in my sleep sometimes. And I wake early to pray. I hope that won't disturb you. I don't sleep much anyway. Dylan's admission came out more honest than he intended. Nightmares. Emma studied his face with those perceptive brown eyes. From the war, Itran, among other things. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the warmth of the food and the relative coziness of the kitchen, creating an unexpected intimacy. Dylan found himself stealing glances at Emma, noticing things, the graceful way she moved her hands when she spoke, the intelligence in her eyes, the way she seemed to fill spaces with calm presence. She was beautiful, he realized, not in the way he had expected, but in a way that was somehow more real, more substantial. Her beauty wasn't fragile or decorative, it was strong, warm, alive. Dylan, Emma said suddenly, may I ask about the other letter you received today? Dylan's coffee cup rattled against the table. What other letter? I saw you holding two letters when I arrived. You looked troubled, more troubled than my appearance would warrant. Dylan stared at her. How had she noticed that? How had she read his emotional state so accurately from such a brief observation? You're very observant. My father taught me to watch people carefully. In medicine, what people don't say is often more important than what they do say. Dylan stood abruptly, walking to the window. The storm raged outside, white and wild and seemingly endless. Behind him, he felt Emma waiting, not pushing, just present. I got a letter from my dead brother, he said finally. Emma didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was careful, gentle. What did it say? That he's coming home, that he sent you to me. Dylan turned to face her. Emma, my brother died 5 years ago at Gettysburg. I've been having episodes lately, hearing his voice, feeling like he's still here. My mind is playing tricks on me. Emma rose and moved to stand beside him at the window. She was close enough that he could smell her scent, something clean and warm, with a hint of herbs. May I see the letter? Dylan hesitated, then retrieved it from the table. Emma read it carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. Dylan, she said slowly, this paper is new. The ink is fresh, and the postmark is from Denver, dated last week. That's impossible. Or is it possible that your brother isn't dead after all? Dylan felt the world shift around him. If Sam were alive, he would have come home years ago. He would have written. He wouldn't have let me think he was dead. Unless he couldn't, unless something prevented him. Emma handed the letter back to him. Dylan, I need to tell you something. The truth about why I really came here. Dylan's stomach clenched. What truth? I didn't just answer your advertisement randomly. I was directed to it. A man in Santa Fe told me about it, gave me your name and address. Said you were a good man who needed someone to help him heal from old wounds. What man? He said his name was Sam Carter. He said he was your brother. The room spun around Dylan. He gripped the windowsill, his knuckles white. That's impossible. He knew things about you, Dylan. Personal things. He knew about your nightmares, about the way you talk to his photograph when you think no one is listening. He knew you blame yourself for his death. Dylan turned to stare at her, his face pale. You're lying. I'm not. Emma's voice was thick and compassionate. He told me you would need time to accept the truth. He told me to be patient with you, to help you understand that some people survive things they're not supposed to survive. Outside, the storm reached a new level of intensity. The wind shrieked around the house like a living thing, and snow piled against the windows in growing drifts. They were completely cut off from the outside world. If Sam is alive, Dylan said slowly, where has he been for 5 years? Why would he let me think he was dead? He didn't tell me everything, but he did say that sometimes a man has to disappear in order to survive. Sometimes the enemy isn't just on the battlefield. Sometimes it's in your own camp. Dylan sank into a chair, his head in his hands. 5 years of grief, 5 years of guilt, 5 years of talking to a dead man who might not be dead at all. The implications were staggering. I don't know what to believe anymore. Emma knelt beside his chair, her hand gentle on his arm. Believe in what you can see and touch right now. Believe in the fact that you're not alone here in this storm. Believe in the fact that someone, whether it was fate or pure chance, brought us together for a reason. Dylan looked up at her, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time since she arrived. Not as the woman he had expected, not as a disappointment or a surprise, but as herself, Emma Rodriguez, who had fled an unwanted marriage to help a stranger heal from wounds she had never seen but somehow understood. Emma, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I was disappointed that you didn't match your letters. But you're not a disappointment at all. What? You're exactly what I didn't know I needed. Emma smiled, and again Dylan felt that shift in his chest, that warming of something he thought had frozen years ago. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, two people who had been strangers that morning sat by the fire as sharing warmth and tentative trust, while somewhere out in the white wilderness, the past was making its way toward them. That night, Dylan lay in his narrow bed listening to the storm and the soft sound of Emma's breathing from the main room where she slept on his old couch. For the first time in years, he felt hope stirring in his chest. Not just because of the possibility that Sam might be alive, but because for the first time since the war, he was not alone. When he finally drifted off to sleep, his dreams were not of battlefields and death, but of warm brown eyes and a voice that spoke of healing and second chances. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of being snowed in together, of learning each other's rhythms and habits, of building something fragile and precious in the space between strangers and something more. Dylan woke on the second morning to the smell of real breakfast, not the bachelor fare of coffee and whatever was handy, but eggs and fresh bread and something that smelled like cinnamon. He found Emma in the kitchen, humming that same Mexican tune, her dark hair caught up in a simple knot that revealed the graceful line of her neck. Buenos dias, she said without turning around. Good morning. I hope you don't mind. I found some flour and managed to make bread. My father always said that bread makes any place feel like home. It smells incredible. Dylan accepted the plate she handed him, marveling at the transformation of his simple kitchen into something warm and welcoming. How long have you been awake? Since before dawn. I told you I wake early to pray. Emma smiled. It's a habit from helping my father with early morning emergencies. Broken bones and difficult births don't wait for convenient hours. As they ate, Dylan found himself studying her face in the morning light. There was something about Emma that seemed to settle his restless spirit. The nightmares that usually plagued him had been notably absent the past 2 nights. Emma, he said carefully, tell me more about the man who directed you to my advertisement. What exactly did he look like? Emma set down her coffee cup, her expression thoughtful. Tall like you, same color hair, though his was longer, wilder. He had a scar here. She traced a line along her left temple, and his left hand was missing 2 fingers. Dylan's breath caught. Sam had lost those fingers in a childhood accident with their father's saw. And the scar. Dylan remembered the day Sam had gotten it falling from their barn loft when they were teenagers. He was very thin, Emma continued, like someone who had been sick or hadn't been eating well. His clothes were worn but clean. And his eyes, what about his eyes? They were sad, haunted like yours sometimes get. But when he talked about you, they lit up. He loves you very much, Dylan. Dylan pushed his plate away suddenly, unable to eat. If this man really was Sam, if his brother really was alive, then everything Dylan had believed about the past 5 years was a lie. The grief, the guilt, the conversations with a dead man, all of it built on a false foundation. There's something else, Emma said quietly. Something I didn't tell you yesterday because you were already dealing with so much. Dylan looked up at her, seeing something like worry in her expression. He gave me this. Emma reached into her medical bag and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. He said to give it to you when you were ready to believe. She placed the bundle on the table between them. With shaking hands, Dylan unwrapped it, and his world tilted again. It was Sam's pocket watch. Their father's watch passed down from his father before him. The watch that Sam had carried through every day of the war until the day he supposedly died. The watch that Dylan had mourned losing almost as much as he'd mourned losing his brother. He said you gave this to him for luck, Emma said softly. The day you both enlisted. Dylan's vision blurred. I did. I told him. I told him it would bring him home safe. He said it did. It kept him alive when he should have died. But it also showed him that sometimes staying alive means letting the people you love think you're dead. I don't understand. Emma reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. He said there are things he needs to tell you face to face. Things about the war, about why he couldn't come home. But Dylan, he wanted you to know that he never stopped thinking about you. He said thinking of you was the only thing that kept him going through the worst of it. Dylan stared down at the watch, its familiar weight solid and real in his palm. After a moment, he wound it up and held it to his ear. The steady tick, tick, tick filled the quiet kitchen like a heartbeat. If Sam is really alive, Dylan said slowly, if he's really coming here, what am I supposed to say to him? How do I deal with 5 years of thinking he was dead? The same way you deal with everything else, Emma said simply. One day at a time, one moment at a time. Dylan looked up at her, struck again by her quiet wisdom. You're not what I expected in any way, are you? Emma's cheeks colored slightly. No, I suppose I'm not. Is that a problem for you? No, Dylan's answer surprised him with its certainty. No, it's not a problem at all. It's just different. Good different. They spent the rest of that day talking. Really talking in a way Dylan hadn't done with another person since before the war. Emma told him about her childhood in Mexico, about learning medicine from her father, about the beauty and hardship of life on the frontier. Dylan found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone. His nightmares, his guilt over surviving. When so many others died, his fear that he was somehow broken beyond repair. You're not broken, Emma said when he finished describing the worst of his PTSD episodes. You're wounded. There's a difference. How can you be so sure? Emma smiled. Because broken things can't be fixed. Wounded things heal given time and the right care. That afternoon, while the storm continued to rage outside, Emma asked Dylan to show her around the house. It was a small place, just 3 rooms and a loft, but it was solidly built and had good bones. This could be a real home, she said, running her hand along the mantelpiece. With some work, some personal touches. Are you planning to stay? Dylan asked, his heart suddenly racing. Emma turned to face him, and he saw uncertainty in her eyes for the first time since she'd arrived. I don't know. That depends on whether you want me to stay. Whether there's room in your life for someone like me. Someone like you. Someone who takes up space. Someone who has opinions and speaks her mind. Someone who isn't delicate or ornamental. Emma's voice grew quieter. Someone who might not be what you ordered, but who could love this place and the man who owns it with everything she has. Dylan stepped closer to her, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Emma, what I ordered was a stranger. What I got was you, and you're worth more than anything I could have ordered from a catalog. Even though I'm not small and delicate, Dylan reached up to cup her face in his hands, marveling at the softness of her skin, especially because you're not small and delicate. You're strong and real and here. You make this place feel alive in a way it hasn't felt since before the war. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Dylan, stay, he said simply. Not because you're running from something, not because you need safety, but because you want to. Because maybe we could build something good together. Emma's answer was to rise on her toes and kiss him. It was soft tentative at first, then deeper as Dylan responded. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. I want to stay, Emma whispered, but there's still so much we don't know about each other. So much that could go wrong. Then we'll figure it out together. Dylan rested his forehead against hers. All of it. Sam, the past, the future, all of it. That night they sat by the fire together. Emma curled against Dylan's side as he read aloud from one of his few books. Outside, the storm was finally beginning to calm, the wind less fierce, the snow falling more gently. Dylan, Emma said quietly, what will you do if Sam really does come here? What will you say to him? Dylan was quiet for a long moment, considering. I think I'll ask him why he let me grieve for him, why he let me think I was alone. And if he has good reasons, then I'll try to forgive him, and I'll try to figure out how to be brothers again after 5 years of thinking I didn't have a brother at all. Emma tilted her head to look up at him. He loves you, Dylan. Whatever his reasons for staying away, whatever secrets he's carrying, that much is real. How can you be so sure? Because of the way his face changed when he talked about you. Because he spent time finding someone he thought could help you heal instead of just coming straight home. Because he trusted me with that watch, knowing it was the one thing that would prove to you that he's really alive. Dylan held her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair. For the first time since receiving Sam's letter, he felt ready to face whatever truths were coming their way. On the third day, the storm finally broke. Dylan woke to brilliant sunshine streaming through the windows and the sound of snow sliding off the roof in great wet chunks. The world outside was transformed into something magical. Everything covered in pristine white, the familiar landscape made new and beautiful. "It's over," Emma said, appearing beside him at the window. "The storm." "Yes," Dylan agreed, but he wasn't thinking about the weather. He was thinking about the fact that now they could travel again. Now the outside world would intrude on the cocoon they'd built together. Now Sam could actually arrive if he was really coming. "Are you ready?" Emma asked, as if reading his thoughts. Dylan looked down at her, this woman who had appeared in his life like a gift he hadn't known he needed. "I'm ready for whatever comes as long as you're here." Emma smiled and took his hand. "Then let's face it together." That afternoon, as Dylan worked to dig them out from the snowdrifts, they heard the sound of approaching horses. Dylan straightened, shading his eyes against the sun's glare off the snow, and saw two riders picking their way carefully down the mountain trail toward his ranch. One rider was clearly struggling, slumped over his horse's neck as if injured or exhausted. The other rode with military precision, alert and watchful. As they drew closer, Dylan's heart began to pound. The struggling rider had dark hair, now longer and wilder than he remembered. He was thinner than he should be, his clothes worn, but clean. And when he lifted his head and looked toward the house, Dylan saw eyes he thought he'd lost forever. Sam. His brother was alive. Dylan stood frozen in the snow as the two riders approached his ranch. 5 years of grief, 5 years of guilt, 5 years of one-sided conversations with a dead man. And now Sam was here alive, real, and looking like he'd been through hell. Emma appeared beside him, her hand slipping into his for support. "Dylan, breathe," she said quietly. "Just breathe." The rider stopped about 20 feet from the house. The man Dylan didn't recognize, tall, well-dressed, with calculating eyes, dismounted first and helped Sam down from his horse. Sam moved stiffly, favoring his left side, and Dylan could see he was in pain. "Hello, little brother," Sam said, his voice hoarse but unmistakably familiar. Dylan couldn't speak, couldn't move. The man he'd mourned for 5 years, the brother he'd loved more than life itself, was standing in his yard looking like a shadow of himself, but undeniably alive. "Dylan," the stranger said, his voice carrying an authority that made Dylan's spine straighten instinctively. "I'm Thomas Hendricks, Sam's employer. We need to talk." Something in Hendricks' tone set off alarm bells in Dylan's head. This wasn't a reunion. This was something else entirely. Dylan finally managed to say. "You're alive." Sam's face crumpled with emotion. "I'm sorry, Dylan. God, I'm so sorry. I wanted to come home, but I needed him elsewhere," Hendricks interrupted smoothly. "Sam has been working for me for the past 5 years. Very important work." Dylan looked between the two men, confusion and anger warring in his chest. "What kind of work?" Odd opened his mouth to answer, but Hendricks cut him off again. "The kind that required him to be dead to the world. The kind that kept him alive when a lot of other deserters ended up swinging from trees." Dylan's blood ran cold. "Deserters?" "Sam left his post 3 days before Gettysburg," Hendricks explained casually. "Technically, that makes him a deserter. Technically, the penalty for desertion during wartime is death. But I offered him an alternative." Emma's hand tightened in Dylan's. He could feel her tension, her recognition that they were in danger. "What alternative?" Dylan asked, though he was beginning to understand. "Work for me. Use his skills to help me acquire certain properties that their owners were reluctant to sell. In exchange, I kept his desertion secret and let everyone think he died a hero's death." Dylan stared at his brother, seeing the shame and misery in Sam's eyes. "Sam, tell me this isn't true." "I was scared, Dylan," Sam whispered. "We were ordered to charge an entrenched position. It was suicide. Everyone knew it was suicide. I ran." "So you've been working for this man for 5 years, doing what exactly?" Hendricks smiled coldly. "Helping me expand my business interests, persuading reluctant landowners to sell their properties at fair prices. Sometimes that persuasion required creative approaches." Dylan felt sick. "You've been terrorizing innocent people." I've been building an empire, Hendricks corrected, and now it's time for the final phase. You see, Dylan, your little ranch sits on some very valuable land. There's a proposed railway line that will run right through this valley, and I need to control all the property rights before that information becomes public. You want my land. I don't want it. I'm going to have it, one way or another. Emma stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. And if Dylan won't sell, Hendricks' smile grew wider, nastier. Well, accidents happen on remote ranches, especially during harsh winters. Dylan could easily freeze to death in a snowstorm, leaving his property to his only living relative, his brother Sam, who works for me. Dylan felt the world shift around him. This wasn't a reunion. This was a trap. Sam hadn't come home out of love or guilt. He'd been sent here as part of Hendricks' scheme. Sam, Dylan said quietly, is this why you're here to help this man steal my land? Sam's face was anguished. No, Dylan. Yes, I don't know. He swayed on his feet and Dylan realized his brother was more than just tired, he was ill. I told him I wouldn't do it anymore. I told him I was done being his puppet. But he said if I didn't help him get your land, he'd tell everyone I was a deserter. You'd be disgraced by association. You think I care about that? Dylan's voice rose with anger and hurt. You think I care more about my reputation than having my brother alive? He said you'd hate me if you knew the truth. The only thing I hate is that you stayed away for 5 years because of this bastard's threats. Hendricks pulled a gun from his coat, pointing it casually in Dylan and Emma's direction. This is all very touching, but we have business to conclude. Dylan, you're going to sign over the deed to this property. Sam, you're going to witness it. And then we're all going to have a terrible accident. Emma moved slightly and Dylan realized she was positioning herself to shield him. The realization filled him with fierce protectiveness. There's just one problem with your plan, Dylan said, his voice steadier than he felt. What's that? You're assuming Sam is still working for you. Hendricks' eyes narrowed. He is working for me. He doesn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Emma said suddenly. Even when the choices are bad, we still get to choose who we are in the moment that matters most. Sam looked at her, then at Dylan, then back at Hendricks. She's right, he said quietly. I've made a lot of bad choices, Dylan. But I don't have to keep making them. Sam, don't be stupid, Hendricks warned. You know what I can do to you. What I will do to you. Maybe, Sam agreed, but I also know what I should have done 5 years ago instead of running away. I should have stood and fought even if it meant dying. Maybe it's time I remembered how to be a soldier instead of a coward. Dylan watched his brother straighten up, saw something shift in his posture and expression. For the first time since arriving, Sam looked like the man Dylan remembered, the older brother who had always protected him, always stood up for what was right. Sam, Hendricks said coldly, raising his gun to point directly at Sam's chest. You're making a mistake. No, Sam said firmly. The mistake was trusting you in the first place. What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. Sam lunged toward Hendricks, trying to knock the gun away. Hendricks fired the shot, echoing off the mountains. Sam cried out and stumbled, but kept moving forward. Dylan tackled Hendricks from the side, and they went down together in the snow, fighting for control of the weapon. Behind him, he heard Emma's voice, strong and commanding. Sam, stay down and press your hand against the wound. The gun went off again, the bullet going wild. Dylan managed to pin Hendricks' gun hand to the ground, but the older man was stronger than he looked and began to overpower him. Then Emma was there, holding something in her hand, a large rock she'd grabbed from somewhere. She brought it down hard on Hendricks' wrist, and he screamed, releasing the gun. Dylan scrambled for the weapon, pointing it at Hendricks as the man writhed in the snow, clutching his broken wrist. Don't move, Dylan commanded, his voice deadly serious. Emma was already kneeling beside Sam, her medical bag open, working to stop the bleeding from the bullet wound in his shoulder. It's not too bad, she said, her voice calm and professional. The bullet went through clean, no major arteries hit. Sam looked up at his brother, his face pale but his eyes clear, for the first time since arriving. Dylan, I'm sorry. For everything. For running away, for staying away, for bringing this trouble to your door. Dylan looked down at his brother, really looked at him. Sam was thinner than he should be, marked by years of hard living and guilty choices. But he was alive. He was here. And in the end, when it mattered most, he had chosen to stand and fight instead of running away. We'll figure it out, Dylan said simply. All of it, But first, let's get you inside and let Emma take care of that shoulder. As they helped Sam into the house, leaving Hendricks tied up in the yard to await the sheriff, Dylan caught Emma's eye. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything, for staying, for fighting, for believing in us when we couldn't believe in ourselves." Emma smiled, and Dylan felt that familiar shift in his chest, the feeling of frozen places beginning to thaw. "That's what family does for each other," she said simply. Dylan looked at his brother, then at the woman who had come into his life as a stranger and become so much more. "Family," he repeated, liking the sound of the word. "I like the sound of that." 3 months later, Dylan stood on his front porch watching Emma tend to her herb garden. She had transformed not just his house, but his entire life, bringing warmth and laughter and purpose to days that had once felt empty and endless. Sam lived with them, now his shoulder healed and his spirits gradually improving as he worked to make amends for his years with Hendricks. The railroad company had indeed come through, offering generous compensation for an easement across their property, enough money to expand the ranch and build the life Dylan and Emma were creating together. "Dylan," Emma called from the garden, "come see this. The chamomile is already blooming." Dylan walked down to where she knelt among the plants, marveling as always at her ability to make things grow and thrive. "It's beautiful," he said, though he was looking at her rather than the flowers. Emma caught his gaze and smiled. "Are you going to ask me? Or are you going to keep staring at me like that?" Dylan laughed, pulling the small ring box from his pocket. It had been their father's ring, simple and honest and real, just like the woman he wanted to give it to. "Emma Rodriguez," he said, dropping to one knee in the dirt beside her garden. "I ordered a mail-order bride because I thought I wanted companionship. Instead, I got you someone strong and wit and beautiful and real. Someone who saved my life and my brother's life and made our house into a home. Will you marry me? Will you stay forever?" Emma's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at the ring, then up at his face. "I came here running from one marriage," she said softly. "But I'll say yes to this one, because this one is my choice, because this one is love." As Dylan slipped the ring onto her finger, Sam appeared on the porch grinning widely. "It's about time, little brother," he called. "I was starting to think you'd lost your nerve." Dylan stood and pulled Emma into his arms, kissing her thoroughly while his brother cheered and the Montana mountains looked down on them with timeless approval. Later, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Emma leaned against Dylan's shoulder and said quietly, "Your letter said you wanted a small, delicate woman to take care of your house." "My letter was wrong about what I wanted," Dylan replied, tightening his arms around her. "What I got was so much better. What I got was everything I didn't know I needed." Emma smiled and settled more comfortably against him. "Good," she said simply, "because you're stuck with me now." "Forever?" Dylan asked. "Forever," Emma confirmed. And as the stars came out over their little ranch in Montana, Dylan Carter knew that sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never ordered at all. They were the ones that found you when you needed them, most wrapped in unexpected packages and delivered by the hand of fate itself. Thank you so much for joining Dylan and Emma on their incredible journey of love, forgiveness, and second chances. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what moment moved you most. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales of love, conquering all odds, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this with someone who believes in the power of unexpected love and the beauty of finding exactly what you need when you least expect it. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest gifts come in packages we never ordered, and the truest love grows in the spaces between what we expected and what we truly needed. See you in the next story, and thank you for being part of our storytelling family.